Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. Bill de Blasio has been in office for 14 months. How's he doing? What are his successes? What are the missteps? And most importantly, does Bill de Blasio and his agenda represent a paradigm shift? To discuss Bill de Blasio, the man, the message, indeed the metaphor, and his responses to increasing economic, social, and political inequality is Eric Alterman, whose Inequality in One City, Bill de Blasio and the New York Experiment, Year One, was just released as an ebook and a printed book by The Nation. Eric has authored 9 other books on politics and public policy. He's a distinguished professor of English and journalism at Brooklyn College and is a colleague of mine at the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism. He is also the liberal media columnist for The Nation and a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, the Nation Institute, and the World Policy Institute. Welcome, Eric. It's been a while.
Thanks.
Good to see you. Okay. You make an argument in your concluding chapter that, in a sense, Bill de Blasio and his agenda represents a paradigm shift. What was the paradigm, and what is this new paradigm?
Well, it's a pretty simple thing, although I have to say I find it a little bit surprising, having covered national politics most of my life. The paradigm is this. You promise large numbers of people changes in their life. You deliver those changes, and they vote for you. Now, that's not how national politics works. National politics is all symbols. You can't really get anything done unless you want to start a war. Most of the arguments are carried out in the media and very distant from people's lives. But in a metropolitan situation, even though the mayor doesn't control taxation, which is the most important problem he has, and therefore doesn't have a lot of control over the overall budget, you can actually do things, particularly if the city council is with you, which is the case in New York. So he's able to deliver services to people who aren't used to being ignored. Certainly they've been ignored by Michael Bloomberg and Rudy Giuliani. And these people in the past have not voted very much. So the question will be, will people vote in response to the services that they can now get that they didn't used to be able to get?
Okay.
That's the paradigm.
Okay, we're going to do that. In my intro, I talked about Bill de Blasio being more than really a New York City mayor. He's both a metaphor and a lightning rod. I don't remember a local politician with as much promise and also enemies out there, if you will, than Bill de Blasio. He walked in under fire, and he's been under fire throughout the 14 months of his mayoralty.
Well, when was the last time somebody ran for office in this country and said, I will raise taxes on rich people?
Not very frequently.
Yeah, not since the 1960s. No one. So he was throwing down a marker. He was saying rich people have had it too easy. It's nice that we have rich people, good for them, but they have to start carrying a little bit more weight for all the rest of us. Things have gotten out of hand. So naturally, if someone's going to say something that has been, I don't really know what a third rail is, but if he's going to touch a third rail of American politics, it's going to cause a lot of attention and a lot of concern among people.
Okay. So to answer the question, how's he doing, the question that I posed in the intro, your answer is almost unambiguous. Very well.
I think he's doing surprisingly well, to tell you the truth.
Talk about some specifics here. How do you come to that conclusion? You know, what are the issues, the events, the attitudes that led you and should lead others by persuasion to come to the conclusion that Bill de Blasio is a positive paradigm shifter?
Well, before we get to that, one thing that surprises me about how well he's doing is how well he's doing at the stuff that you just got to do in order to be a successful mayor, regardless of your ideology.
Housekeeping.
Yeah. And crime is going down. The economy is doing very well. The city is very safe and clean. All of the things that we were warned would happen if we elected this communist mayor to bring us back.
Sandinista supporting,
Right.
Cuba visiting.
If we, we're not back in the 1970s at all. Things have actually improved. In many respects, he's been a much better manager than Michael Bloomberg, which is ironic because.
Explain. Defend.
Well, Michael Bloomberg was not very effective in his housing policies. He was not very effective in economic development, except in the very narrow areas that he paid attention to. And he was absolutely terrible with regard to helping people, spending the money that the city got for Sandy. He was terrible on criminal justice issues. If you take a look at Rikers Island, these enormous problems festered. No one got a nickel to improve. Not a single house was rebuilt under Michael Bloomberg with all that money from Sandy. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And the situation at Rikers just let it fester. It's unbelievable. That place is the most hellish place I've ever heard of. By the way, I think the New York Times, they don't get enough credit. We all love and hate the New York Times at the same time, but the reporting on Rikers has been,
and particularly the Tom Robbins piece recently was just wonderful. I mean, it was devastating piece.
Yeah, well, there've been, it does what the press is supposed to do. There've been probably 50 pieces, and they forced the politician's hand, and now something will actually be done. But
well, okay, let's stay with that. I mean, there is a real power in the construction of narratives by the media. Now, for the most part, de Blasio has confronted a narrative that's been constructed by, for example, the New York Post, the Daily News, etc.
Well, you say he has.
Go ahead.
And those people in the media think he has. But actually, the media have changed a great deal in recent times. Just 5 or 6 years ago, the Post and the News had over double the circulation that they do today. When was the last time, again, I would have thought this was unthinkable. A guy wins the Democratic nomination in a 5-person race, or however many people were in that race, with nearly 40% of the vote, without getting the endorsement of the New York Times or the Post or the Daily News. I can't remember anything like that. So de Blasio being able to win that against the media, now, look, it's my view, and I think I demonstrated in the book, you can disagree with me if you want, that most of the local media were in the tank for Bloomberg. They just thought Bloomberg was wonderful. Part of it was that he threw great parties that the media went to. I went to them. And part of it was that
reporters can be bought off by shrimp cocktail and fine wine.
Reporters don't make a lot of money. They can be bought off very cheaply. But the other thing Bloomberg does is he runs a media company that overpays people. It's one of the best paying media companies, and a lot of people want to work there. In any case, look, Rupert...
Wait a minute, are you suggesting a don't bite the hand that might feed you approach by reporters?
I think... well, yeah, I mean, for those people who specifically wanted jobs or thought they could see themselves working there, some of them. But I'm saying, for whatever reason, I don't like to psychoanalyze people unless they lie down on a couch in my house twice a week.
And still, you're not professionally qualified to do so.
Right.
But
I'm saying that reporters went incredibly easy on Michael Bloomberg. They really thought that Michael Bloomberg, the way he served the 1% and made Wall Street happy, and it's a great city if you're wealthy. I'm pretty wealthy, relative to the rest of the world. I live in a great place. I go to Lincoln Center. I eat in nice restaurants. That's the life that...
Wait a second. I'm envious now. Now we're going to get into this politics of envy here.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm sorry about that. But in any case, if you've got an expense account, New York is a great place right now. It's safe, it's clean, and it's fun. And reporters were... that's as far as they looked. But... de Blasio won this election, the general election, by 50 points, and 49 points. And he was very clear that the issue was economic inequality, that things had gotten too far, that we had paid too much attention to the super wealthy. Bloomberg's comment about the city needs more Russian billionaires was really shocking to a lot.
Or the comment that New York City is a luxury
product,
city.
and if you don't like it, you can shop somewhere else. I mean, I think, and de Blasio thinks, or de Blasio's people think, that a lot of people who were doing well decided they didn't want to live in a city like this anymore. that there was things had gotten too far, that working people couldn't afford to live anywhere near here anymore, and the city needs these people, and you want to live around these people. I mean, not everybody wants to send their kids to private schools and have them be sheltered from everything. You want some real life if you're going to live in New York City.
Okay, let's get to, I mean, let's use your terminology, real life. What has de Blasio done that has substantially addressed, or at least looks like it can substantially address issues of inequality? In other words, a question that you asked, what can a mayor of New York City actually do, and what has Bill de Blasio done?
Well, it's a very long answer. That's why this.
You wrote a book.
Yeah, it's
summarize.
It actually looks like a real book. I haven't seen it before today. But
that's right.
It's got some.
I get it. I get it. Yeah, those bits and bytes. You only get one page at a time.
But well, my point is that the city government is enormously powerful. It would be enormously powerful even if he didn't have his particularly ambitious agenda in this area, because the city accounts for so many rules and regulations and contracts and so forth. I've used the statistic that approximately 20% of people in the city have some economic connection to the city itself. Mm-hmm. And de Blasio wants to use that power to demand more of city contractors and everybody who does business with the city. So, for instance, Michael Bloomberg, in exchange for the 421 abatement.
Explain what that is very briefly.
I can't explain it in detail, but if you want to build an apartment building in the city and charge people $25 million for their apartments or $50 million for an apartment, you can actually get a really, really cheap tax rate if you build some affordable housing along with it. Affordable housing is defined as affordable to people making between $35,000 and $100,000.
That's a fairly substantial rate, but go ahead.
So Bloomberg had a strict 80-20 policy. If you built 100% of your housing, 80% of it could be charged whatever you want, and 20% of it had to fall in this affordable category.
Right.
And so billionaires are the people getting the benefit from that. Well, de Blasio, he's actually very pro real estate. He's very pro building.
Because you can't build affordable housing unless somebody's building it.
Right, but he's always been pro-building. He's been in favor of building even when there was no affordable housing, and he was pro the Atlantic Yards project, which a lot of people didn't like. Anyway,
and still don't like because it didn't deliver on the affordable housing.
Well, yeah. Anyway,
go ahead.
We're not getting into that.
Okay.
Anyway, he's
at least you're not.
He's up that from 20 to 27% by and large. He doesn't have a hard and fast rule.
Right.
But he's played hardball with the developers on the Domino Sugar Factory.
Right. And the Astoria Grove is going to be
and he's won both times. And he's shown the muscle of the city government in just the way he's talking about. So that's impressive. Obviously, the most important thing he's done, or symbolically anyway, is succeeding in getting the free pre-K. Mm-hmm. For everyone in the city. Pre-K costs on average $13,500 for a family. So $13,500 post-tax dollars is a pretty substantial amount of money.
Even for you wealthy people.
Not for me, but maybe for you.
Nice, very nice. You're in trouble. This interview is going to take a bad turn. Go ahead.
No, it's a very substantial amount for me. I paid it to a number of pre-K places, and I wasn't happy about it. I wish this program had been in around when I needed it. Actually, I'm lying. My daughter got free pre-K from the city of New York in the Gifted and Talented program, but it was very small.
Right.
Very few kids got it. So he's expanded that to everyone.
And then there was a political fight over this. I mean, and he ultimately got what he wanted, even though he didn't get the presumed mechanism to pay for it.
I think he knew he was never going to get that mechanism.
He wasn't.
But all your friends in the media were saying it was ridiculous. It was never going to happen. The Daily News, when was the last this time happened? They had to issue an apology saying we were wrong. The New York Times
and you gloat about that in the book.
And the New York Times was wrong too, because when Cuomo made his initial offer, everyone, including some of his advisors, but also the New York Times editorial page, said, just take the money and run. And he said, no, we need substantial funding. We need 3 years. 1 year isn't going to do it. So that's another example. After school is another example.
Yep.
But the one that I find most interesting or most symbolic is, really poor people. And people with drug problems and people in abuse situations, they rely on the welfare agency, which serves hundreds of thousands of people, 3 million people, something like that. 130,000 a day, 3 million over a year. I don't know the figures. They're in the book. Buy the book. It's in it. And de Blasio appointed to head that agency. Bloomberg appointed a guy who now works at the American Enterprise Institute. De Blasio appointed the former head of the Legal Services Corporation,
Yep.
the guy who has been suing that agency on behalf of its clients for the past 10 years. And that guy came in and he just changed all the rules, all the things that people needed done that had never been done. He just did them in a period of 6 weeks. And now that agency really does serve the people who need it, rather than the bureaucracy that made a living off of it. And de Blasio didn't even know the guy. And that's very impressive to me. He really did appoint people who he thought could do the job and deliver the services, rather than people who are good at schmoozing the press or who would impress the op-ed pages and so forth.
Okay.
It's a very different method of governance than Democrats do use nationally. That's why I call it a new paradigm.
Okay, you did an interview with Bill, I guess, in October of 14, prior to the general election, and you asked him about his focus on inequality. And coming away from that interview and the research you've done, his focus on inequality, is that core? Is that part of his DNA, or is it in some measure, a large measure, transactional politics, good electoral politics, or is it in his gut? And does it matter?
Again, I don't judge people's guts except my own.
Okay.
And it's getting better. I've been going to the gym. Listen, I've written about inequality a lot on a national level. But to write this book, I gave myself a seminar. I actually got a reading list from John Mollenkopf, professor here, who's an urban expert, and I did a lot of research. And I learned about the breadth of the effects of inequality to a degree that I had never understood. How many different ways it affects people's lives. And I was shocked. I was shocked. The example that always shocks me, that I use a lot, is that if you're a pregnant woman, and you live in a place that is distant from all kinds of services, that's called spatial inequality. Mm-hmm. So you're always spending your time traveling to doctors and to your job and to whatever services you need and your kids' schools and so forth. Then the stress that you feel will end up affecting the size of the brain of your child.
Yeah, the biomedical stuff is
right.
Unbelievable.
So your child, from the moment that child is born, will be at a disadvantage from other children, simply because of where you lived and the difficulties experienced by your mother, even if the mother's perfectly healthy,
right,
and gets good care and so forth. So
this is really so multidimensional that you're really only looking at one facet of this.
Right. When you talk about inequality, you're talking about all kinds of problems. Now, that was actually my first question to Bill de Blasio. I said, look, I've been writing about this for a long time, and I was angry that the rich people are getting so much richer than everybody else. But how did you understand that it has all these tentacles? And his answer to me, it's nothing like the answer I would have given. I suppose it's pretty good, but it was surprising to me. He just said, look, I grew up in a difficult family situation because I guess his father left and died, and he grew up with a single mother. And then he worked in all these different jobs where he spent a lot of time with various communities who needed help, and he just learned it that way. And yes, he read The Nation a bit. He wanted me to know he read The Nation.
Oh, okay.
But it's not.
That's very important.
Yeah, but it's not like he studied it and learned it from the experts. He lived it, and what's impressive about making that connection to the kinds of people he's appointed is he's appointed people who are experts in these various areas and who are trying to carry out this agenda. And I kept saying, but aren't you? When he was doing the pre-K, and I was talking to all the people who were doing it before they rolled it out, I said, but what's going to happen when one of these people you hire turns out to be a pedophile who had a record, and the Daily News and the New York Post start getting hysterical about this? They said, look, we're going to have problems, for sure, but that's not what we're concerned about. We're concerned about delivering 54,000 spots that will work out. And they did amazingly. And so de Blasio...
And got credit for it even from critics for the most part.
Yeah, de Blasio's done two things so far. I mean, we can talk about the cops if you want. There's a problem. There was certainly a problem there. But he's done two things that everyone said he wouldn't be able to do. One is the very basic business of doing the government. And the other one is delivering a very difficult service to people on time, on budget, and effectively, on top of all that.
Yeah, and on top,
it's impressive.
Yeah, and even from sitting on this side of the table, he's done an awful lot. I mean, universal pre-K, cutting down stop and frisk, sick days, the union contracts, which everybody said, which Bloomberg kicked the can.
I would like a contract, but I guess that's not.
Yeah, but you and me, forget that. Forget the contract. The Ebola. So he's done well on that. Okay, now. What are the missteps? And you mentioned police. Is that a miss? What didn't he do right?
Two
and
missteps.
What should he have done?
Two missteps.
Go.
He underestimated the deviousness of the governor of New York.
Ah, the devious governor. Go ahead. Talk about the devious governor.
Yes. The governor, see, it's complicated. People don't understand the charter school issue very well. Fewer than 4%, or about 4% of all New York City school children are in charter schools.
In and around that,
6% of public school children. 1.1 million public school children, 6% in charter schools. So who really cares? 6%. It's not that big a deal. But the people who fund charter schools are the same people that fund elections, the hedge fund managers. The single biggest contributor to Albany politicians in the last election cycle were charter schools, more than the real estate industry. So de Blasio figured, well, charter schools are not that important. Eva Moskowitz is a pain in my ass, but I can deal with it.
Not only could he deal with it, I mean, he approved 14 of the 17.
Well, before we get to that.
This is going to be a long, go ahead.
No, but he approved 14. She's only not getting 3. Who can have a big problem with that? And the 3, there were problems with each of them. They were displacing other students and so forth. And what he didn't understand is that these people are so important to funding the politics of Albany, and that they give so much money, and everybody depends on them. And Andrew Cuomo doesn't do anything that rich people don't like, ever. So Andrew Cuomo saw in Eva Moskowitz's funders an opportunity to build up his base. And when she, don't forget, private schools, she can let everybody out of school for the purposes of demonstration. Public schools can't do that. So when she created these optics of this enormous demonstration on behalf of charter schools on a day when de Blasio thought he was lobbying for his pre-K budget, and Cuomo conspired with her and her supporters to make de Blasio look like an idiot.
Pretty harsh talk.
Well, that day he looked like an idiot because he had no idea this was coming. He had and he thought he and Cuomo had a much better relationship than they did. So so he learned his lesson. He learned who he was dealing with, and he's not made that mistake again.
Well, wait a second. I mean, it happens over and over and over again when he delivers a city budget address and talks about the Sunnyside Yards, and within it seemed minutes, the governor said no way. So I don't know if this seems to be now. Clearly, there's always been historically
look,
a conflict.
Why did de Blasio work so hard to get Cuomo the Working Families Party's endorsement?
Quid pro quo that he didn't get?
No, it's because he's got no choice. It's because the mayor of New York City is entirely dependent on the governor of New York City. And so de Blasio, I kind of admire him for this. I would never do it. That's why I'm not in politics. He's got to allow Cuomo to walk all over him in order to be effective in that job. Most of the people in the Working Families Party are furious that they nominated Cuomo because he gave them the back of their hand after he did. But I'm sure de Blasio thinks he did the right thing because his job is to deliver for New York City, and he helped do that. So it's true that he definitely could have been smarter about what he had coming from the charter school fight that he lost. But I'm pretty sure he learned his lesson, and that everything he's done since then has been strategic, even if it's sometimes.
What's the second one?
Well, the second one is also quite complicated, I think, is not getting rid of Rachel Nordlinger when he had the opportunity. I mean, Rachel Nordlinger,
who used to work for Al Sharpton and then became Charlene McRae's chief of staff, I guess was the term.
And whereas the problem, there were two problems with it. The first problem is that she lived with a man who had shot a police officer, I think, and didn't kill him, but shot him, and called cops pigs in social media, and sounds like a really bad guy. But you can't really fire somebody because of who their boyfriend is. But she also failed to disclose a lot of things on her when she was hired to the city. And that he could have fired her for. She gave him a sword, and he wouldn't use it.
Well, there's personal loyalty, and that counts for something, I guess.
But, well...
Or not to.
So you think it was a good idea for Hubert Humphrey to support the Vietnam War, too?
No.
Okay, so...
Oh, yeah, nice. You're asking me questions. The answer is no.
I don't buy this personal loyalty thing. You do what gets you...
You have permanent interest, not personal
You
power.
do what gets you the best result.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
And the fact is that what he did in that thing was he gave all these people the idea that he's on the side of people who hate cops, because clearly her boyfriend hated cops, and she didn't say anything, but Sharpton is famous for not liking cops, and it connected him to a whole series. It put him in the middle of a culture war that he didn't need to be.
And then events really overtook him with the assassination of the two cops on top of the...
Right, but even leaving aside the assassination of the two cops, it was a very bad move to stick by her. I think the price he paid was too high.
Okay, the time's run out, but very interesting observation. The role of marriage partners or even cohabitators on elected officials. Well, an interesting concept which we can't explore.
No, but in this case, it's significant because, like Hillary Clinton, Charlene is a partner in this administration. She has a real policy role. Nothing's hidden about that. He was elected in part because of his family. So it's entirely legitimate to say that she should have a very strong voice. It's not just she's like the little woman.
Right.
It's that she's a player. And I think that, you win some, you lose some in that.
Yes, we do win some and we do lose some. My thanks to Eric Alterman for his observations and insights, and for the book, Inequality in One City. Join me next week here on CUNY TV. Good, I love... Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.